The first warning wasn't the text. It was the silence in the hallway, thick, stretched, the kind that makes the air hold its breath before you even touch a door. Something in that building felt wrong the moment I stepped inside, like danger had pressed its palm flat against the other side of Mr. Green's office door, waiting on me to turn the knob. The message that dragged me here still burned against my fingertips. You need to see this. Come to my office immediately. Then a second one, sharper, colder. Don't tell your daughter-in-law or your husband anything. You might be in danger. I pushed the door open and froze so hard my breath locked in my throat. Calvin was inside, my husband, sitting across from Jordan's boss, like he belonged in that chair. Leaned back, legs crossed, one arm draped over the chairist like he was discussing weekend plans, not our dead son's name. He looked up at me with calm, even eyes. "Hey, baby," he said gently, like he'd been expecting me. My stomach knotted so fast it hurt. "Calvin, what are you doing here?" My voice stumbled out thin and shocked. Before he could answer, Mr. Green stood too quickly, his chair scraping the floor just enough to break the air. "Just cleaning up employment paperwork," he said, smiling with his lips, but not his eyes. "Routine liability signatures." His glance toward me lasted only half a second, but the warning in it sliced straight through me. Don't talk. Don't react. Follow my lead. I swallowed that message whole. Calvin kept talking, smooth and unbothered. "I told Mr. Green I'd swing by today. Anyway, figured I'd get everything handled while I was here." Handled what? My hands tightened around the strap of my purse. My mind kept flicking back to what I'd seen earlier that morning, the shirt Jordan left hanging on the laundry door the week before he died. The tiny tear I'd never noticed on the collar, a tear that felt like a bruise made of cloth. That same bruise was pulsing in my chest now. Calvin stood, smoothing his jacket, and as he passed me, he placed a warm hand on my shoulder. The touch didn't comfort. It hovered like warmth pressed through a glove. "I'll see you at home," he murmured. The door clicked behind him. That sound echoed harder than it should have. Mr. Green didn't move at first. He waited, listening, only turning toward me once he was certain Calvin was gone. Then he reached over and locked the door with a soft, deliberate click. Something inside me tightened. Something old. Something maternal and dangerous. Before he spoke, let me say this, so you know who's telling you this story. I'm Jacqueline Rhodes, Jordan's mother. And if you're watching this right now, just tell me where you're listening from. I want to know who's here with me while I pull this truth out slow. It's the only kind of company that makes moments like this bearable. Mr. Green stepped closer, his voice dropping lower. "I didn't want him here when you arrived. My breath shook. Your son came to me weeks before he died. He said quietly, he said things weren't right at home. Said he felt watched. Said someone close to him had changed. The walls felt like they leaned in around me. He made me promise," Mr. Green whispered, "that if anything happened to him, I should come to you first, not the police, not the family." The room spun a little. My knees softened, and he told me one more thing, something he insisted I never forget. Mr. Green swallowed hard. "Your son warned me," he said, voice trembling, not to trust him. The room didn't feel like an office anymore. It felt like a doorway, one I wasn't ready to walk through, but couldn't turn away from either. Mr. Green moved slowly, like each step carried something fragile, something he'd been holding on to longer than he should have. He reached his desk, opened the top drawer, and pulled out a slim black phone I'd never seen before. Not company issued, not modern, something old, like it had been kept hidden on purpose. He gave me this, Mr. Green said, told me not to let anybody else hear what's on it. I felt my breath tighten as he powered it on. The start-up tone sounded faint, like it was fighting its way out of a dark corner. My palms grew damp. Every instinct in my body told me something irreversible was coming. He came into my office one morning, Mr. Green continued softly. He looked shaken, like he wanted to tell somebody something, but wasn't sure he'd survive the telling. The phone finally lit up. Mr. Green tapped a single file. A voice note. He hesitated before pressing play, and when he did, my knees trembled. Jordan's voice filled the room. My baby's voice, thin, trembling, breathing too fast between words. Mr. Green, I need you to do something for me. If anything ever happens to me, tell Mama, not Daddy. Please, don't let him find out first. Don't tell Brianna either. Somebody in my family ain't who they say they are. My hand flew to my mouth. The sound of my son's fear cut straight through me, sharp as broken glass. I stood there frozen, listening to the panic in his breathing, the tremor that shouldn't have belonged to a man who'd always stood so tall. My heart ached. No, it cracked, because that voice didn't belong to the Jordan I knew. This was a voice trying to outrun something. The message ended with a shaky inhale, like he was gathering courage he didn't have. The silence afterward felt like a punishment. Mr. Green didn't speak right away. He let the weight settle, the truth sit heavy in the air. There's more, he finally said, pulling out a plain white envelope, sealed and stiff. He came back 2 days before he passed and gave me this, told me to hold it until now. The envelope had my name written across the front in Jordan's handwriting, crooked and rushed, like he wrote it while looking over his shoulder. My chest tightened. My fingers hovered over it, too afraid to touch something that felt like a goodbye. Mr. Green placed it gently in my hands. He trusted you, he said quietly. He wanted you to know something he couldn't say out loud. A faint dizziness washed over me. Little pieces of memory drifted forward, ones I hadn't questioned until now. On the day of the funeral, when the crowd thinned and the sun felt too heavy on my skin, Jordan's old friend asked if I needed a ride home. I said no, Calvin had the car. But when I went to join him, Jordan had insisted that I take my own car instead. Mama, just take the keys. He told me days earlier during an errand run, pressing them into my hand. Ain't no reason for you to ride with him tonight. He said it with a calm face, but his fingers were trembling. Back then, I thought he was being dramatic, just tired from work or stressed or irritated with his father like sons can be, but that memory rose now with new weight, new edges, new danger. My voice came out thin. Why didn't he come to me? Mr. Green shook his head slowly. He was scared, ma'am. Real scared. Said he didn't know who to trust anymore. I stared at the envelope, at my name written in fear. My heartbeat moved from my chest to my throat, each thud louder than the last. A coldness crept up my arms, wrapping around me like someone whispering a warning against my skin. Mr. Green stepped closer. I know this is a lot, but you need to open it. Whatever he found out, it's in there. My fingers tightened around the envelope, feeling the hard edge of something inside. Paper, maybe more. The truth waiting like a pulse. And then Mr. Green's voice dropped to a low, steady murmur. There's a reason he didn't want your husband knowing anything. I held that envelope like it was breathing, like it carried the last warm piece of my son tucked inside. The room felt too small, too still, as if every sound was waiting for me to open it. My fingers shook as I slid them under the seal. The paper tore soft, but the sound cut through me anyway. Inside were only two things, a small brass key taped to a folded slip of paper. Nothing else. Just a key and a message written in Jordan's hurried hand. Check the room. Don't trust them. The words hit like a blow to the chest. No explanation. No names. Just that warning. My breath thinned, turning sharp in my throat. My fingers traced the short sentence again, like maybe another meaning would appear if I touched it long enough. But it stayed the same, frightened, rushed, incomplete. Mr. Green stepped closer, voice lowered as if the walls could listen. He gave me that key the day he looked the most scared, kept glancing at the door, like someone might walk in behind him. He paused, remembering. He said, I'll meet her there when I know it's safe. Then he left like something was chasing him. My knees softened. The room swayed gently before settling again. Jordan was planning to meet me. He was trying to get to me. He didn't make it. A quiet ache pulsed at the back of my neck, the kind that comes when a truth begins forming before your mind's ready to hold it. I closed the envelope slowly, feeling the shape of the key beneath the paper, and tried to breathe past the sting rising in my eyes. Something inside me cracked then, not loudly, not in a way anyone else could hear, but in the quiet places where mothers keep the parts of their children nobody else sees. He didn't trust the people closest to him. I murmured more to myself than to Mr. Green. He nodded with a heaviness that confirmed it. That key burned against my palm. Storage unit keys had a weight to them, cold, metallic, a little lonely. The kind of key someone chooses when they need a place nobody else knows about, a place to hide something, or someone. My thoughts drifted, uninvited, back to a moment I'd been ignoring. 2 days before Jordan died, he called me. His voice was low, tight. He said he wanted to see me after things settled at home. I laughed it off at the time, told him he was always welcome. Baby, you can come by any time. I'd said. He let out a shaky breath, like he wanted to tell me more. But then he went silent. Not a pause, silence. The kind that comes when someone walks into a room unexpectedly. Jordan, I'd asked, thinking maybe the call dropped. A faint shuffle, a breath. Then the line cut off. I assumed it was Brianna walking in, maybe fussing about something. Married couples had their moments. I didn't think it meant anything. People get distracted. Phones die. Conversations break. But standing here now, holding the words "don't trust them," my stomach twisted. That memory grew teeth. It wasn't a random interruption. It wasn't a simple hang-up. Someone walked in on him. Someone who changed the direction of that call. My chest tightened as the truth settled deeper. He was trying to warn me. I whispered. Mr. Green didn't answer. He didn't need to. The room felt heavier, as if Jordan's fear had seeped through the walls and settled around us. I slid the key into my pocket, the metal cold enough to make my skin flinch. What room is he talking about? I asked, though the question felt like it belonged to the air, not to Mr. Green. He shook his head. I don't know. He just said it wasn't safe to keep anything with him, that he needed a neutral place. The envelope trembled slightly in my hands. A neutral place meant something dangerous at home, something urgent, something he couldn't outrun. My heartbeat slowed into something deep and steady, like my body was bracing itself for whatever came next. I didn't feel strong. I felt pulled toward the truth. My son left behind, pulled toward the room he wanted me to see. Mr. Green watched me carefully. You should go soon, he said quietly. Whatever he left there, it's meant for you. The key in my pocket felt heavier than bone, and I knew with absolute certainty that whatever waited in that room was going to change everything. The storage facility sat on the edge of town, quiet in the kind of way that makes every echo feel personal. Rows of metal doors stretched out under a dull gray sky, each one identical except for the fading numbers stenciled near the locks. I walked slowly, my hand wrapped tight around the small brass key Jordan left behind, my heartbeat pushing against the inside of my ribs like it wanted to turn back. Unit 117. The number looked colder up close. I slid the key into the lock. The metal turned too easily, like this door had been opened recently. My hand hesitated on the latch before lifting it. The door rolled up with a low, scraping groan that felt like something waking up. Inside was a small square room, windowless, dim, quiet except for the settling creak of metal walls. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, pulling patches of light into the corners. My breath steadied as I stepped in. This wasn't a room meant for storage. This was a room meant for secrets. On the floor, right where the light spilled the strongest, sat a plastic storage bin. Papers were stacked loosely inside, receipts, envelopes, printouts with edges curled. A phone, cracked nearly in half, lay on top. A spiral notebook rested beside it, worn at the edges, the cover soft from being handled too many times. I knelt slowly and lifted the bin closer. The receipts came first, withdrawals, deposits, cash transactions that didn't match the spending habits I knew Jordan had. They weren't random. They followed a timeline, each one spaced just enough apart to mean something. Then the photos. The first one made my throat close. Jordan was maybe 8 or 9, grinning with missing teeth, standing beside me at a cookout. My arm was wrapped around him tight, but in the background, behind the grill, a man's face had been scratched out violently, ink grooves deep enough to tear the picture. I frowned, flipping to the next. The same thing. Another cookout, another family picture, same face, scratched out so aggressively the photo bent. A third one, birthday party, balloons, cake, same scratched out face again. My pulse pressed hard at my temples. I didn't recognize the body or the clothes in any of the photos, but the outline of the figure, the way he stood, the angle of the shoulder, someone had erased him intentionally. Someone who didn't want me to see him. I set the photos aside and reached for the phone. The screen flickered faintly when I pressed the side button, but it was too damaged to come fully alive. Something in me tightened, imagining Jordan alone, scared, breaking this phone because it held something he didn't want found. I placed it down and opened the notebook. The first page was filled with lines, dates, short notes, arrows pointing to places I didn't understand. But near the bottom, one entry snagged my breath. CR, $8,500. The letters looked like they'd been carved, not written. CR. Calvin Rhodes. My fingers stiffened around the page. I stared at those two letters, letting the weight of them sink in. Why was my husband's initials next to that number? Why did it look like Jordan pressed the pen so hard the ink bled through? A soft sound snapped through the hallway. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Deliberate. My head lifted sharply, breath freezing. The steps weren't coming from inside the unit, but just outside it, close enough to rattle the thin metal walls. A shadow drifted across the sliver of light under the door. Someone was standing there, watching. I closed the notebook fast, my pulse hammering at my neck. The footsteps stopped. Silence thickened, waiting. A soft scrape followed, like a shoe pivoting on concrete. Fear slammed through my chest. I grabbed the notebook, shoved it into my purse, and stood quickly. I lowered the door halfway, then all the way, keeping my steps light. When I turned the lock, another sound whispered through the hallway. Breathing. Not mine. Not controlled. I didn't look back. My feet carried me to the car faster than my mind could process, keys shaking in my grip. The moment I slid inside and locked the doors, my hands trembled around the steering wheel. Someone had followed me. Someone knew this room existed. And someone didn't want me to see what Jordan left behind. But it was too late. I'd already seen his father's initials. The house felt different when I walked in. Too quiet, too clean, too arranged, like someone had been moving things around while rehearsing how normal was supposed to look. I closed the door softly behind me, the notebook buried deep in my purse, and listened to the hum of the refrigerator, the soft tick of the hallway clock, the kind of silence that comes when a house is pretending. Ma. Brianna's voice floated from the kitchen, bright and eager in a way that sat wrong against the air. She stepped out holding a dish towel, smiling wide, too wide. I made some soup. I know you've been running around all day. You should sit down. Let me fix you a bowl. She didn't cook often. Not for me. Not like this. Thank you, I said carefully. She moved around the kitchen fast, almost nervously, opening cabinets she didn't need to open, touching things twice, wiping counters that were already spotless. Every movement felt like it had a shadow behind it. She brought the bowl over, hands trembling just enough to see if you were paying attention. Let me know if you need anything else, she said. I nodded, studying her. Her eyes wouldn't settle. They kept shifting, toward the hallway, toward her phone, toward her hands. Something in her spirit buzzed like she was carrying a secret too heavy and too loud. Then, softly, she said, he shouldn't have gone out that day, not with how upset he was when he left. My spoon stilled midair. Jordan never told her he was upset. He never said where he was going. He didn't talk to anyone that morning. I knew that because I checked the call logs after he passed. He called nobody, texted nobody, but here she was speaking on what only someone who saw him would know. My voice slipped out steady. Quiet. Who told you that? Her body froze, just for a flicker. A small, sharp pause where her breath stalled. She blinked too fast, swallowed too hard. I just figured. Brianna. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. Her eyes darted to the hallway, then to her phone like she was waiting for someone to save her from answering. She forced a laugh that didn't find its way to her face. I'm just saying he wasn't himself lately. That's all. You know how he gets. but I didn't know how he gets. And her explanation didn't fit him. Didn't fit the morning he died. Didn't fit anything. I watched her closely as she grabbed her phone with shaking fingers and held it like a shield. Her chest rose too quickly, her breathing no longer steady. The lie had lodged itself in her throat like a stone. A faint vibration buzzed against the counter. Her phone lit up. A preview flashed across the screen. Stop talking. The edges of the words were sharp, bold, desperate. She snatched the phone too fast, stumbling a little as she tucked it behind her back. My pulse thudded at the base of my skull. She wasn't just nervous. She was scared. Scared of whoever sent that message. Scared of what she might slip and say. I reached for my purse, pretending to adjust it just to ground myself. The notebook inside pressed against my side, the letters CR and the number beneath it pulsing like a bruise. As I stood, my foot nudged something soft at the edge of the hallway wall. Brianna lunged forward, scooping up her black tote bag with a shaky hand. She hugged it close to her body like it carried something fragile or dangerous. "You don't need to clean in the hallway," she said quickly, stepping between me and the space. I'm sorting through stuff." Her voice cracked on the last word. Whenever she moved the bag, a metallic clink sounded inside, light but unmistakable. Keys, or metal tools, or something heavier. And every time I got within arm's reach, she shifted it, sliding the strap over her shoulder, stepping away like the bag belonged to a private world I wasn't allowed to enter. My gaze landed on her shaking fingers gripping the handle. Something in that bag didn't want to be found. Brianna forced a smile that barely held its shape. "I'll, take this back to the room." She backed up slowly, careful not to turn her back, fully on me, careful to keep the bag shields between us. Her eyes flicked once more to her phone, to whoever was controlling her through text messages. And something inside me shifted. It wasn't anger. Not yet. Just a quiet, rising certainty. She knew something. Something she wasn't supposed to. Something someone didn't want her to say. And whatever was hidden in that bag, it was connected to Jordan. Calvin was already in the living room when I stepped out of the kitchen, sitting too straight, too still, like a man waiting on news he wasn't sure he wanted. The lamp beside him cast a warm glow over his face, but his eyes didn't match the light. They watched me the way people watch something they're trying to understand and control at the same time. "You were gone longer than usual," he said, voice soft, smoothed over like it had been sanded down before he spoke. "Everything okay at the office?" The words were easy enough, but the way he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped, felt practiced. Performed, like he'd rehearsed the concern while I was out. "It was fine," I said, keeping my coat on longer than necessary. "Just taking care of some things." He nodded slowly, eyes narrowing a fraction. "What kind of things?" A simple question shouldn't have felt like an interrogation, but his tone carried a thin thread of pressure, something tugging for more than a casual answer. His shoulders stayed too tight, his jaw working just enough to notice. I lowered my purse onto the chair beside me, the notebook inside pressing against the fabric like a secret heartbeat. "Paperwork," I said carefully. "That's all." Calvin leaned back, letting his breath ease out like he wanted to believe me. "You sure?" he asked softly. "You look shaken." I forced a smile. "It's been a long day." His gaze stayed on me, quiet, searching. Then suddenly, he stood, closing the distance between us. His hand reached out, brushing my shoulder gently. Too gently. You know you can talk to me, right? He whispered. The softness in his voice felt wrong, borrowed, like it didn't belong to him. And when he leaned close, a scent drifted from his jacket. Not the warm cedar cologne he'd worn since our son was little. This was new, sharper, expensive, a scent I'd never smelled on him before. It clung to his clothes with the confidence of something worn more than once. My chest tightened. "Where you been today?" I asked lightly, keeping my tone open. His eyes flickered, just a flash. "Home," he said. "Told you I was waiting on you." That wasn't the truth. I could smell it on him. "Long day, huh?" he added quickly, steering the conversation away. "Want me to fix you something?" Calvin didn't fix meals. Didn't offer. Not like that. Something in him was shifting, either to hide something or to brace for something he hoped I didn't know. Before I could respond, his phone vibrated on the table, short, sharp, insistent. He glanced at the screen and snatched it up too fast, turning away as he answered. "Yeah," he murmured, voice dropping low, almost swallowed. "She's here." I stilled where I stood, breath held tight. A longer pause, then a whisper. "I told you I handled it. She don't know nothing." My heart thumped against my ribs, cold spreading down my spine. I shifted my weight just enough to hear clearer, careful not to creak the floor. "She ain't said a word," he went on. "Just let me take care of it. I told you she—" His voice dipped even lower. "Jackie don't suspect a thing." My name, soft, careful, like he didn't want it reaching the air. I stepped back into the kitchen doorway, as quietly as I could, heart beating loud enough I feared it might give me away. I tightened my face, lifted a glass from the counter, and turned on the faucet, just enough noise to mask any clue I'd been listening. He walked back in moments later, phone tucked away, expression smoothed back into calm. "Everything okay?" I asked, drying the glass slowly. He forced a small smile. "Yeah, just checking on something." Something. Not someone. Not work. Not anything named. His jacket hung on the back of the chair, the expensive scent rising from it again, like a quiet confession. My eyes drifted to it before I could stop myself. Calvin noticed. "You tired?" he asked quickly, stepping closer. "You look like you need rest." Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. But what I needed more was distance from his voice, from that cologne, from the truths hiding in both. I forced my own calm smile. "Yeah," I said. "I think I'll turn in." He kissed my cheek gently, too gently, and whispered, "Get some sleep." But as I walked toward our room, one thought followed me, like a shadow with its hand at my back. He wasn't lying by accident. Mr. Green had already pulled the blinds before I arrived, lowering each one slowly until the room dimmed into a muted gray. His posture was tense today, shoulders squared, lips pressed thin, like he'd been pacing before I stepped in. He motioned me toward the chair across from his desk, and the sight waiting for me there made my stomach sink. A stack of printed bank statements. He slid them closer with both hands, careful as if handling something fragile. "These are the transactions from Jordan's personal account for the last 8 months. He said softly. "I requested copies after our last talk." I drew a breath and lifted the first page. The lines of numbers blurred for a second before sharpening. Large withdrawals, 500 here, 800 there, then thousands. Cash, always cash. My chest tightened as I turned the page. The pattern didn't make sense. Jordan didn't spend like this. He was careful, grounded, the kind of man who saved more than he touched. But page after page told a different story, a trail of money leaving his hands with no explanation, waiting on the other end. Mr. Green leaned forward. Look at the notes he typed beside some of the withdrawals. I ran my thumb down the margin, stopping when the letters jumped out in small, sharp handwriting. Daddy lied. Not safe to keep this. I'll deal with it after I talk to her. A tremor went through me, slow and cold. He wrote these himself. Yes, Mr. Green said quietly. Private notes, not shared. I turned another page, slower this time. A withdrawal from the night before Jordan died. $8,000 in cash. The timestamp was late evening, hours before everything changed. My breath caught. He never came home that night. I whispered. He said he was working late. Mr. Green's jaw tightened. Look at the number tied to the transfer requests. I scanned the page until I found it. A phone, number listed beside request approvals. Something pang hard against my ribs. The end of the number matched Calvin's. The last 4 digits jumped like they were lit. My throat went dry. My finger hovered over the line. That's my husband's number. I said, the word small, horse. I checked it 3 times. Mr. Green said, these approvals were verified through his phone. Every transfer you just saw. A pulse of disbelief hit me, sharp, bitter. My breath lifted and stalled in my chest. Why was Calvin managing Jordan's money? Why were these withdrawals tied to him? And what did Jordan mean when he wrote Daddy lied? Mr. Green lowered his voice. There's more. Did Jordan mention being watched? I shook my head, memory pulling tight. He said something was wrong at home, but he didn't say what. He never had the chance. Mr. Green stood and walked to his filing cabinet, pulling out a small envelope. I didn't want to overwhelm you, but you need to see this too. Inside was a business card, plain, white, older-style typography. Bank of Midtown. No name at first glance. Just a card. But on the back, written in shaky pen, your son was in tears that day. He said someone at home was watching him. My breath caught, not in surprise, but in recognition. An older woman at the bank had slipped this into my hand days after Jordan passed. I hadn't understood why. I hadn't even had the strength to read it properly then. I'd tucked it away, thinking grief made people say strange things. But holding it now, it felt like a confession. I remembered the woman, gray hair pulled tight, glasses low on her nose. She'd looked at me with something too heavy to call sympathy, something closer to warning. Her voice had been barely a whisper when she leaned in. He wasn't himself, she murmured. He said something about home, not being safe, and that someone was watching him. I brushed it off as grief talking. I didn't brush anything off now. My fingers closed around the card, knuckles whitening. The statement sat open in front of me like wounds, withdrawals, timestamps, numbers that should have meant nothing, but now meant everything. He was trying to run from something. I whispered, trying to protect himself. And trying to protect you, Mr. Green added gently. I lifted my eyes. Why would Calvin be tied to his money? Why didn't Jordan tell me? Mr. Green held my gaze for a long, careful moment. That, he said quietly, is what we need to figure out next. The technician slid the cracked phone across the counter like he was handing me something radioactive. The screen was still spiderwebbed, dark around the edges, but it flickered with a faint life now, just enough to show the files he'd managed to pull. "This is all it gave me," he said gently. "Everything else was wiped. One video. Just one." My hands shook as I tapped it open. Jordan's face appeared, shadowed, grainy, lit only by what looked like a desk lamp. His eyes were red, swollen around the lids, the way they used to get when he cried too hard as a little boy. He kept glancing over his shoulder, breath hitching between words. "Mama." His voice cracked. I pressed my palm to my chest. "Mama, if something happens." He dragged a hand across his face, trying to steady himself. It didn't work. He leaned closer, whispering like the walls could hear him. I went in Daddy's drawer, and I found something he shouldn't have had. My breath stilled inside me, tight, sharp. "I'm scared to keep it here. Mama, I'm scared to even put it in the house. I don't know who's watching me anymore." He paused, listening to something off screen. His voice dropped to a trembling whisper. "I think he knows I saw it." The video ended abruptly, cutting off mid-breath, like he'd yanked the phone away to hide it. I stared at the screen long after it went black, the sound of his voice replaying in my ears. Each word a thread pulling me towards something dark and waiting. Mr. Green exhaled slowly. That phone was hidden deep in the storage unit. He tried to protect it. Protect himself. Protect me. My heart pounded with a new urgency, raw, instinctive. There was no part of me that could wait another second. "I need to go home," I said. I didn't ask for permission. I didn't wait for comfort. I grabbed my purse and left. The house was quiet when I walked in, too quiet, the kind that rests on your shoulders like a warning. Calvin wasn't home. I didn't call out for him. I went straight to our bedroom, every step colder than the last. His drawer sat where it always had, second on the right. Smooth oak, easy glide. My fingers trembled as I pulled it open. Shirts, rolled belts, old receipts. Nothing unusual, but Jordan's voice echoed in my head. I found something he shouldn't have had. So I pulled the whole drawer out, lifting it from its rails. That's when I saw it. An envelope, thin, beige, tucked flat against the underside of the dresser frame. Invisible unless you knew to look. I reached under and slid it free. My pulse thundered through my ears as I held it. No name, no writing, sealed. Before I could open it, a small voice drifted from the hallway. "Grandma?" I turned. My grandson stood barefoot near the doorway, rubbing his eyes like he'd just woken from a nap. He wasn't supposed to be here. Brianna had said she was taking him to her sister's for the day. I crouched. "Hey, baby, you okay?" He nodded, stepping closer. "Grandpa said I could stay here with him. He left a little bit ago." A cold tremor ran down my spine. Did he say where he was going? He shook his head. Then his small face creased with something remembered. "Grandma, I saw Grandpa talking to a man the other night." He pointed toward the front door. "Outside, by the black car." My breath caught. What man, sweetheart? He frowned, searching for the right words. "I don't know him. He had on a dark jacket. They were whispering. And Grandpa told me to go back inside." A chill settled deep beneath my skin. A black car. Whispering. At night. Jordan's video flashed through my mind. The fear, the drawer, the secret. I placed my hand gently on my grandson's shoulder. "Thank you, baby. That's very helpful. Go play in your room, okay? Grandma's right here." He nodded and patted away. I turned back to the envelope, pulse throbbing at my throat. Whatever Calvin hid, whatever Jordan saw, was inside. I slid a finger under the seal and opened it slowly, bracing myself for the truth waiting inside. The envelope felt lighter than I expected, almost empty, but its weight sat heavy in my palm, as if the truth inside it wasn't measured in ounces, but consequences. I moved to the bed and sat on the edge, legs tense, breath shallow. I unfolded the flap slowly, bracing myself for the kind of truth Jordan would have risked hiding. A set of papers slid out first, a copy of Jordan's will. My eyes stung. I hadn't seen it before. The date in the top corner was recent, too recent, signed only weeks before he passed. My throat tightened as my gaze drifted lower, searching for the details he'd never told me. Beneficiaries. Primary, Brianna Rhodes. Secondary, Calvin Rhodes. Not me. Not his mother. Not even a shared designation. Just them. The papers trembled between my fingers. Jordan loved me. He trusted me. But this will felt like something made under pressure. Quiet pressure. The kind that speaks through fear instead of choice. A smaller slip of paper caught a receipt, folded into thirds. I opened it carefully. $6,900, cash withdrawal. Authorized signature, Jordan Rhodes. Verified by SMS too. Last 4 digits matching Calvin's phone. My chest tightened. This wasn't a coincidence. This lined up with the statements Mr. Green showed me. This wasn't random. This was deliberate. Something Calvin was tied to, something Jordan documented, because he didn't trust anybody else to. My hand steadied as I reached for the last item. A photo. Printed, grainy, like it had been pulled from security camera footage or taken with a zoom lens from far away. Jordan stood in the frame, face sharp with emotion, jaw locked, eyes full of heat. He was arguing with someone just outside a strip of darkness. The other person's face wasn't visible, tucked behind shadow, but the posture, the build was familiar. Then my gaze drifted further. Behind them, blurred in the background, stood Calvin, arms folded, shoulders tense, watching. My breath faltered. Calvin wasn't part of the argument. He was observing it, quietly, silently, like someone who didn't want to be seen, but needed to be there. I swallowed and reached for the next photo. This one hit harder. Brianna was in it, eyes swollen, makeup smeared from crying. She was pointing at Jordan, jabbing her finger at him as if begging him not to say something. Her mouth was open, mid-plea, mid-panic. Behind her, a tall figure loomed in the dark, face turned away, but body language threatening. My hand tightened around the photo's edge. They weren't posed. They weren't talking. They were unraveling. The room suddenly felt too small, the air too still. I pressed the photos flat on the bed, forcing my breath to find a rhythm as the memories tried to surface, memories I hadn't understood until now. A soft knock startled me. I turned. It was Ms. Devereaux, our next-door neighbor, standing small in the doorway, hands folded around her cardigan. "I didn't mean to startle you," she whispered. The door was cracked. I stood quickly, wiping the shock from my face. "Is everything all right?" Her eyes flicked toward the staircase, then back to me. She stepped inside, lowering her voice. "Can I tell you something? I've been holding on to it, but I don't feel right keeping it anymore. Something cold slid down my spine. Tell me. She inched closer. About a week before Jordan passed, I saw him and Calvin outside. She paused, eyes watering. They weren't talking. They were arguing. Real low, real tense. My pulse throbbed at my neck. They were standing near the fence line. She continued, voice trembling. Calvin kept pointing at something in his hand, and Jordan kept stepping back. I didn't hear everything, but I did hear this. Your son said, "You shouldn't have done that." The words sliced clean through the room. And then she whispered, voice fading. Calvin said, "It's already done." Air rushed out of me, unsteady, thin. Miss Devereaux reached out, touching my arm gently. I prayed on it. I told myself it wasn't my place. But something in my spirit said you needed to know. My fingers curled slowly around the edge of the bed, grounding myself. The photos, the receipt, the will, every piece of truth was falling into place, forming a pattern I didn't want to see, but couldn't turn away from. I looked at her, voice barely above a whisper. Did anyone else see them? She shook her head slowly. No, baby, just me. She left quietly, closing the door behind her. I stared down at the pile of papers and photos spread across my bed. Evidence Jordan had hidden, evidence Calvin buried, evidence that was now sitting in my hands. And each piece pointed to one truth. Jordan wasn't just scared. He was cornered. I found Brianna in the guest room, sitting on the edge of the bed with her knees pulled close, her fingers twisting the hem of her shirt until the fabric puckered. She looked small, too small for the bold-mouthed confidence she usually carried. Her eyes were red, swollen around the edges, like she'd been trying and failing to hold back a storm. "Brianna," I said softly. Her head snapped up. Fear, real, raw fear, flashed across her face before she could smother it. She pushed herself upright too fast, wiping at her cheeks like she hadn't been crying. Ma, I didn't hear you come in." I stepped further into the room, staying calm, steady, unreadable. "We need to talk." Her breath stuttered. The bag she kept near her feet, the same one she guarded like a living thing, shifted slightly when she nudged it with her shoe. A faint metallic clink echoed inside. She moved the bag behind her legs without thinking. Then she forced a smile that cracked immediately. "About what?" "You mentioned something earlier," I said, keeping my voice level, "about the way Jordan left the house that day. Something you shouldn't have known." Her shoulders tensed. Her fingers curled. She opened her mouth, but whatever excuse she tried to reach for slipped away before she could form it. Her breathing changed, shorter, shallower. I took another step. "Who told you?" I asked. "Or were you there?" That broke something in her. She shook her head too hard, too fast, her hands flying up like she needed to push the words away. "No, Ma, I didn't mean..." She stopped, swallowed, tried again. "I shouldn't have said that," she whispered. Silence folded over the room. I lowered myself slowly into the chair, near the dresser, watching her, not accusing, just present. The kind of presence that leaves no more room to run. "You're shaking," I said softly. Her fingers tightened around the bedspread. She looked at me with a face full of guilt, deep, bruised guilt. Jordan, he found out something he wasn't supposed to find. My pulse tightened. "About Calvin?" Her eyes flicked to the doorway, then back to me. She nodded, barely. A tiny broken gesture. What did he find? I pressed. Her breath trembled as she exhaled. Something in your husband's drawer, something he wasn't supposed to have. Jordan told me he didn't feel safe in this house anymore. He said he was going to you, not his daddy, because you were the only one he trusted. The words struck like a blade, sliding beneath ribs. I didn't move. I let her keep unraveling. That night, her voice cracked. Her fingers clawed at her own palms. Your husband wasn't supposed to be there. My breath stilled. Where, Brianna? Her eyes flooded. Where it happened? Air thinned around me. Before I could speak, her phone buzzed from inside her pocket. She jumped like she'd been struck. She didn't even check the screen before shoving it deeper out of sight, her whole body tightening around the device, as if whatever name lit up would burn her. I stood slowly. What are you scared of? I asked. Her lips parted, but she didn't answer. Instead, she bent down abruptly, grabbing her bag. The metal inside clinked again. She tried to zip it quickly, but in her panic, the zipper snagged, leaving a small gap near the opening. Something white poked out from inside. Not paper, not a notebook. Something stiff, half-burnt, edges curled from flame. I reached for it before she could stop me. No, she cried, snatching at my hand too late. I pulled it free, a charred fragment of a certificate. The seal was half burned away, but the remaining letters were unmistakable. Marriage certificate, Jordan Rhodes and Brianna. The bottom half was blackened, edges crumbling beneath my fingers. My gaze rose, steady, unflinching. Why was this burned? She broke completely then, her body folding inward as if someone had taken the bones out of her. Tears streamed down her face in shaking waves. She pressed both hands to her eyes, as if the truth itself was too bright to look at. I didn't want you to find it, she sobbed. I didn't want you to know he was trying to change things. He said he was filing something that was going to make somebody angry. I tried to stop him. God, I tried, but he wouldn't listen. My heart pounded. Who? I asked quietly. Who was he afraid of, Brianna? She opened her eyes slowly, tears streaking her chin. Her voice dropped to a trembling whisper. Your husband. He wasn't supposed to be there that night. Mr. Green closed the blinds again before he spoke, leaving only the desk lamp glowing between us. The light framed his face in a tired gold, older than I'd ever seen him look. He rubbed his palms together, the sound soft but anxious, and opened a folder he'd kept locked away. We need to piece together Jordan's last 24 hours, he said. Based on what I know and what he told me, we can map the truth. My stomach tightened as he pulled out a stack of printed timestamps, security photos, and handwritten notes. He laid them out like a trail leading to the moment everything shifted. He came to work that morning quiet, Mr. Green said. Didn't joke with the guys. Didn't stop by the break room. He went straight to his desk and sat there staring at the computer screen without touching anything. That's not like him. I nodded slowly. No, it's not. Mr. Green tapped the first sheet. Around lunchtime, someone saw him slip out the back door. He didn't clock out, didn't say where he was going, just left. He slid another paper closer, grainy footage from a back exit. Jordan stepped out fast, glancing over his shoulder like he was checking for a shadow. He was following somebody, Mr. Green murmured. He said he'd seen Calvin drive past the building earlier that morning. Not normal for him. Jordan recognized the car, so when he saw it again, he followed. My breath caught. My husband had been near his job. Mr. Green continued, voice low. Jordan tracked him to a building on Harlow Street. Dark windows, no signage. He waited in the parking lot, watching. He slid the next photo. In the corner of the frame, barely visible, was Calvin's car. My pulse thudded. Jordan's shape stood near the lot's edge, hands in his pockets, shoulders tight, watching the car like he was building the courage to walk over. He told his co-worker, "He saw your husband go inside with another man," Mr. Green said. "Tall, dark jacket. Your grandson mentioned something similar." A chill ran through my arms. What happened next? I whispered. Mr. Green let out a heavy breath. Jordan confronted him when he came back out. They argued behind the building. He placed another sheet down, notes from the co-worker. Both voices low. Heated. Jordan said, "Why are you meeting with him?" Calvin said, "Mind your business." My hand tightened around the edge of the desk. Mr. Green turned toward his computer and clicked an audio file. This was in the voicemail system. He said, "It never sent. The signal must have dropped." He pressed play. Jordan's voice filled the office again, shaking, breathless, terrified. "Daddy, why would you?" The message cut off sharply, swallowed by static. My heart clenched so hard it hurt. That wasn't just fear. That was betrayal, the kind that sits in the chest like stone. Mr. Green reached into the folder again. "And there's something else," he said quietly. He didn't come straight back inside. A co-worker saw him in the parking lot later that evening, pacing. His voice softened, pacing and crying. He slid a handwritten statement forward. It felt heavy even before I touched it. He kept saying, "I can't let Mama see this." He said it over and over, like he was breaking. The words blurred as tears pooled in my eyes. I blinked hard, forcing them back. My son had carried something too heavy for one heart, too heavy and too dangerous. He went home after that, Mr. Green said. But he didn't drive straight there. He parked down the road first, looked shaken, stayed in the car for almost an hour. I felt myself sway, because he knew what he'd seen. And because he didn't know who to trust anymore, Mr. Green said. I pressed my hand to my chest as a memory returned, Jordan calling me that night, voice tight, asking if I'd be home the next day. Asking if I'd be alone, asking questions that didn't make sense then, but made perfect sense now. He was trying to reach me, trying to prepare me, trying to warn me. Mr. Green placed one last page on the desk. He left work early, didn't tell anyone, and that was the last time anybody saw him alive. Silence settled like a final breath. Heavy, certain, unforgiving. I stared at the scattered papers, the timeline, the confrontation, the voicemail, the tears in the parking lot, and felt something shift inside me. Not fear, not confusion, a cold, steady clarity. Jordan didn't die by accident. He died running from a truth he couldn't unsee. And the last person he confronted was my husband. Calvin walked into the house like a man stepping into a courtroom he didn't prepare for. The sun had already fallen, leaving only that thick purple-blue dusk outside, the kind that makes everything inside feel colder. I stood in the living room with one lamp glowing behind me, casting a long shadow across the floor. He stopped when he saw me, breath hitching like he'd run into a wall. "Jackie," he said slowly, "why you sitting in the dark?" I didn't blink, didn't move. "Shut that door." He shut it without a sound. Sit. He did, carefully, like the chair might bite him. He looked smaller than he ever had in all our years together. His fingers laced and unlaced in his lap, nervous, restless. The room thickened with silence until he finally dragged in a shaky breath. I knew this day was coming. He murmured. I just prayed it wouldn't be you standing here, asking. I watched him closely. His shoulders trembled from the inside, the kind of tremble that comes from fear, not grief. Start talking. I said. His eyes flickered up to mine, haunted, exhausted. I wasn't hiding things because I didn't care, he whispered. I was hiding things because I was scared. Scared of who? He swallowed hard, throat tight. A man named Victor Hale. The room tilted just a little. Calvin leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Jordan stumbled into something he didn't know the size of. Hale had money flowing through the company, dirty money, quiet deals, threats, men who don't think twice about who they break to stay in control. My skin prickled. How did Jordan get involved? He was helping somebody, Calvin said, helping them try to expose Hale. Thought he could clean things up from the inside. Thought he could protect Brianna's family. My breath caught. Protect them from what? Calvin rubbed his face with both hands, voice cracking. Her cousin, he'd been tied up with Hale for years. Owed him money. Favors. When Jordan started digging, Hale recognized him. Told him to back off. Jordan wouldn't. So Hale threatened Brianna. Threatened me. Threatened you. I felt the air leave my chest in one slow, heavy push. So you went to meet him, I said. Calvin nodded miserably. I thought if I talked to him, man to man, kept Jordan out of it, everything would calm down. But Hale doesn't calm. He pulls you in deeper until you can't even breathe. My jaw tightened. How did Jordan find out? Calvin's voice dropped. He followed me, the night before he died. The world fell silent inside my ears. He heard everything, Calvin whispered. He heard Hale say our family's names. He saw the money trail. He saw the envelope Hale made me keep, and he confronted me right there in the parking lot. My stomach twisted hard. Calvin looked up at me, tears balancing in his eyelashes. He kept asking, Daddy, why would you meet with him? Why would you let him use you? I tried to tell him to leave it alone. I begged him, but your son, he was just like you. Heart first, brave to a fault. The memory of that half-recorded voicemail. Daddy, why would you? Pressed into my ribs like a bruise. What happened behind that building? I asked quietly. Calvin broke. He tried to walk away. He whispered. Hale grabbed him, pushed him. Jordan fought back. I tried to get between them. Hale said if Jordan didn't stop digging, he'd make sure none of us lived to regret it. Jordan stormed off, hurt, angry, scared, and that was the last time I saw my boy alive. A deep ache unfurled in my chest, slow and merciless. Calvin shook, wiping his face with trembling fingers. I didn't kill him, Jackie, but I didn't protect him either. I didn't listen. I didn't do enough. And I let him walk away alone. Silence pressed between us like a third person in the room. But under that silence, something shifted. Not confusion, not pity, clarity. Calvin wasn't the monster in the shadows, but the man Jordan feared, the one he tried to expose, the one whose name felt like a wound in the air. Hale. He was the real enemy. And he wasn't finished yet. The truth didn't hit me like a blow. It crept in slow, like cold water rising around my ankles, quiet, deliberate, impossible to ignore. Calvin sat hunched forward, his fists pressed against his knees, shaking as though the story itself was burning through his bones. Hale wasn't working alone, he said. Jordan figured that out before anybody. My breath caught halfway up my throat. Say that again. Calvin rubbed the pad of his thumb against his palm, something I'd never seen him do, not in decades. The money Hale was moving, that pipeline wasn't just on him. Somebody else was feeding it. Somebody who could pull strings quietly. Somebody Jordan trusted at first. A slow chill crept along my shoulders. Somebody local? He nodded, once heavy. Somebody tied to Brianna's family. I felt my spine stiffen. Tied how? Calvin's voice dropped. Her cousin, the one who introduced them years back. He'd been mixed up in Hale's dirt long before Jordan came along. Debts, favors, things he never told anybody. When Jordan started digging around, the cousin panicked. Instead of protecting him, he ran straight to Hale. The room sharpened like glass. My heart thudded low and slow, each beat carving out a deeper understanding. And Brianna? I whispered. Calvin shook his head. She didn't know nothing at first. But when Hale showed up at her job, when threats came in, she realized her cousin put her in the middle of something dangerous. She burned papers because she was trying to erase any trace of her involvement. She was scared, Jackie. Scared for her baby. Scared for you. Scared for all of us. It clicked. All of it. The trembling hands. The bag she wouldn't let out of her sight. Her sleepless eyes. The clinking metal. The frantic whispering. The way she froze any time a car slowed in front of the house. She wasn't hiding guilt. She was hiding fear. Jordan confronted her cousin. Calvin said, told him he was going to report everything. Jordan thought he was protecting all of us. But her cousin told Hale before the sun went down. A quiet, cold ache wrapped around my ribs. Hale threatened me next, Calvin murmured. Told me if Jordan didn't stop digging, he'd take it out on you. On Brianna. On the baby. Told me he had people. Told me he could make folks disappear without leaving a shadow. My stomach twisted painfully. Just hearing the words made the air in the room feel contaminated. Jordan found out you were being blackmailed. I said. Calvin nodded, tears welling. He saw messages on my phone. He wasn't supposed to. That's why he went through my drawer. He found the envelope Hale forced on me. Proof I was cooperating. He shook his head. It wasn't cooperation. It was survival. A leash disguised as paperwork. A threat dressed up as a contract. And Jordan didn't run, Calvin whispered. He ran toward it. Thought he could shield us. Thought he could fix it before it swallowed the whole family. I swallowed hard. That was my baby. Brave enough to fight storms he never should have faced. Calvin lifted his eyes, red around the edges. He died trying to save me. Save his wife. Save his baby. Save you. His voice cracked. He carried too much, Jackie. Too much. I stood slowly, needing air, needing space. My hand brushed the dresser, and something slid forward. A small envelope, unsealed. No name on it, but the handwriting. Jordan's. My heart stuttered. I opened it with trembling fingers. Mama, something is wrong. Daddy is scared but won't say why. Brianna's been crying every night. Hale showed up again, and I know they're lying to me. I don't know who to trust anymore. But I promise, when this blows over, I'll tell you everything. I just need a little more time. Love you, Jay. The ink at the bottom was smudged, like the pen had shaken in his hand. I pressed the letter against my chest. The ache inside me sharpened, then settled. A truth sank in, deep, steady, devastating. He tried. He tried with everything in him. Calvin's voice drifted to me, small and broken. He was trying to save us, Jackie, and I failed him. I failed my own son. But I barely heard him, because a new clarity began to rise in me, quiet, cold, certain. There was still a missing piece, still a shadow behind Hale, still a partner whose name hadn't surfaced. Hale wasn't the whole problem. He was just the beginning. I folded the letter gently, my heartbeat steady now. I wasn't grieving anymore. I was preparing. The office didn't feel like the same place I'd stood in before. The air was too still, too expectant, like something with teeth was hiding behind the silence. I stood near the blinds, watching the parking lot without really seeing it. Every plan I'd carved out the night before was lined up in my chest, tight and steady. Mr. Green moved with a precision that told me he understood exactly how dangerous this moment was. He slipped the recorder beneath a folder, slid it forward an inch, then settled behind his desk. "You ready?" he murmured. "I've been ready," I said. He texted the first message. Brianna arrived first. She came in small, almost folded into herself, hands gripping her bag, like she feared someone would snatch it. Her eyes flicked to me, then to Mr. Green, then quickly back to the door. "You okay?" she whispered, already bracing for bad news. "Sit," I told her. The word barely left my mouth before she sank into the chair, shoulders curled inward, knees pressed together. Her chest moved fast and shallow. She knew something. She'd been holding it for too long. A click at the door made her flinch. Calvin stepped in. He moved slowly, cautiously, eyes sweeping the room as if he felt the air closing around him. When he realized the door had been locked from the inside, his face darkened, something between resignation and fear settling in his jaw. He sat, but didn't lean back, hands gripping his thighs. Then came the final knock. The temperature in the room dropped. Victor Hale stepped inside, like he was walking into his own office. Fresh jacket, calm posture, a man who thought accountability didn't apply to him. But when his eyes met mine, something twitched, recognition, irritation, maybe even annoyance that I was still standing. The door clicked shut behind him. Mr. Green folded his hands neatly. "Let's get started." Brianna's breath stuttered. Calvin looked away. Hale smirked as if this was beneath him. "You dragging me down here for a dead boy's mess." A heat rose in my chest, slow and deadly. "Say his name again," I said quietly, "and make sure you say it right." He stared at me, the smirk fading. Mr. Green stepped in before the air could ignite. "We're here to establish what happened the night Jordan confronted you." He opened the folder, deliberately sliding a photograph forward, letting the corner tap the recorder. Calvin lowered his head. Brianna's hands shook violently. Hale scoffed. "That boy didn't know what he walked into." "He followed you," I said, stepping closer. "He followed you because he saw something he shouldn't have." Hale raised a brow. "And what exactly do you think he saw?" "The truth," Mr. Green said calmly. "The money, the threats, the partner." Hale's expression flickered, barely but enough. And when he confronted you behind that building, I continued, "What did you do?" He shrugged, casual, too casual. He got loud. I shut him down. "That's it. Did you put your hands on him?" I asked. His tongue clicked. He pushed me. I pushed him. End of story. Calvin's whisper cut through the room like a blade. That's not the end. Hale's head snapped toward him. "Watch yourself." But Calvin didn't stop. His voice trembled, but the truth shoved itself through. "You cornered him. Told him he didn't have long. Told him if he didn't stop digging, you'd make an example out of him." Hale took a step toward Calvin, and that was his mistake, because Brianna broke. "Stop," she screamed, voice splitting. "Stop lying. He told Jordan not to come back. He threatened us. Jordan said he was going to Mama's house next morning. He said he couldn't hide nothing else. He tried to save us." Her words tangled and fell apart, but the truth was clear. Too clear. Hale lunged toward her, and Mr. Green tapped the folder. "I think that's enough." Right then, 2 officers opened the door. Hale froze only a second, 1 second too late. "You're under arrest," an officer said, "for extortion, coercion, and involvement in the death of Jordan Rhodes." Brianna collapsed into sobs as they took him. "I didn't want this. I didn't think he'd hurt him. I didn't think." Her voice dissolved. Calvin stared at his hands, as if finally seeing the weight of everything he'd buried. And I stood there, unmoving, the ground shifting beneath my feet. My grief wasn't simple anymore. It wasn't clean. It wasn't singular. It was layered. And now I finally saw all of it. The house felt different that morning, still quiet, but not the kind of quiet that steals your breath. This quiet rested, like grief had finally stopped pacing and sat down somewhere in the corner to listen. I stood in the living room with sunlight spilling across my hands, warming the cold that had lived there for weeks. My fingers trembled around the one thing I didn't expect to face so soon. Jordan's real phone, the one they'd kept in police evidence, the one he tried to protect even in those final hours. It buzzed once as it powered on, the screen brightening in slow pulses like it was waking up from something heavy. Then a notification flashed. One unsent message. My heart stuttered. I tapped it open. "Mama, I'm scared. If something happens, know I tried to protect y'all." Just one line. One breath. One truth too heavy for him to send. The room didn't tilt, but my knees softened. I eased down onto the edge of the couch, the message glowing up at me like a wound that had waited patiently to open. Tears slid down my cheeks, not in shudders, not in gasps, just quiet, steady lines. The kind that fall when the fight inside finally loosens its grip. He wasn't hiding from me. He wasn't keeping secrets to push me away. He was carrying everything alone, so the rest of us didn't have to. The soft creak of the floorboard made me look up. Calvin stepped into the room, slowly, carefully. He wasn't the man from weeks ago, the one knotted up in lies and fear. Something in him had shifted. The humility in his face softened the guilt around his eyes. A man learning how to rebuild without the armor he used to hide behind. "You all right?" he asked gently. I wiped my cheek, breathed in deep. "He tried to warn me," I said quietly. "He tried to protect us in the only way he knew." Calvin sat beside me, rubbing his hands together the way men do when they don't trust their voice yet. "Jackie," I'm sorry for not being the father he needed, for letting him fight alone. Healing isn't a straight line, and it isn't a warm one. It's jagged at first. But in that moment, something inside me softened, not forgiveness, not yet, but a small clearing. We move forward, I said. For him. Calvin nodded, firm, steady, different. A week later, the three of us sat around the kitchen table. Me, Calvin, Brianna. The air wasn't tense anymore, just fragile. Hale was gone. The weight that had pressed down on Brianna's shoulders for months had finally slipped off, leaving her tired but lighter. She looked at me with reddened eyes. I want him to have peace, she whispered. I want my son to grow up knowing his daddy died protecting us, not because of us. I reached across the table and took her shaking hand. He will, I said softly. We'll make sure he does. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't repaired. But it was movement. And sometimes that's enough to keep a family from falling apart. A few days later, I returned to the storage unit. One last time, the metal door rolled up with that same hollow groan. But this time the air didn't feel cold. The room didn't feel like a grave. It felt like a chapter, one heavy, one painful, but one that had finally reached its last page. The same bin sat in the corner, the same notebook, the same broken phone, the same stack of photos Jordan couldn't walk away from. I reached for the childhood picture, the cookout one, his small hand gripping my wrist, smiling with his whole face. And in the background, the scratched-out figure. This time, I didn't turn away. I brushed my thumb over the rough lines, smoothing them gently. You didn't want him near us, I whispered. You saw something long before we did. Children don't have the words for danger, but they know it. And Jordan had known. He'd been protecting us since he was small. And he died the same way. The ache that washed through me wasn't sharp anymore. It settled deep, warm, steady, like a truth that finally fit where it was supposed to go. Months passed, slow, heavy months. But then the day came. The first ceremony for the scholarship I built in Jordan's name, one for young people fighting battles they can't always speak aloud. His picture stood in the center of the room, framed in soft gold light, smiling the way he did when he still believed the world could be changed if he just tried hard enough. Calvin stood beside me. Brianna held her son, Jordan's son, against her chest. For the first time in a long time, the air didn't feel heavy. I picked up my son's photo, pressed my thumb to the corner, and whispered the words he carried but never got to say. You didn't fail us, baby. My voice trembled, but stayed steady. You saved us,